You know what's really important in a crypto ecosystem like Cardano? Not tricking people. Today, we are going to discuss transparency when it comes to the decentralization of stake pools in Cardano, the Pavia June dev update, a Cardano project with a big hardware partnership, things not looking so great for Binance with the DOJ, and a surprise revelation related to a familiar name. If you feel like the obviously non-aquatic tree is a little bit out of place in this aquarium, or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies Stakepool, ticker AOS. This is one of those news items I would honestly rather not cover. I would actually prefer not to discuss this, but there's an important point here. That point is that the most important rule in crypto is don't trick people. Don't trick people into doing things they wouldn't do if they had all the facts. This is a pretty common sense rule. I would say this probably applies to a lot of different areas of life. It's just really relevant in crypto because there are a lot of grifters out there tricking people in various ways. So even if you're not a grifter, even if you don't have some scam going on, it's really important in crypto that you don't trick people. You don't trick people into doing things that they might not do if they had all the facts. And this probably applies to omitting very, very relevant facts when it comes to decentralization of validators of stake pools in Cardano. So here, Cinnabon asks a question. If a husband and wife open two stake pools and market themselves as separate entities while obfuscating that they're married / a team, is this closer to decentralization or further? And of course, the two poll options are the same. Is this more centralized or less decentralized? They mean the same thing. Less decentralized, won by a slim margin. But who could Cinnabon be talking about here? Hopefully, it's not anybody important. Hopefully, it's not anybody who's very recognizable. Hopefully, it's not a character that we all know and appreciate, right? So, of course, we're hoping this is just two, obscure, relatively unknown stake pools, and it's not really that big a deal. But as it turns out, it seems we are talking about your Cardano Summit 2022 Influencer of the Year. It looks like this is the person involved in the marriage where each of the people in the marriage actually has their own stake pool. And you could argue, hey, what's the big deal? Like a husband and wife can own stake pools. What's the problem here? But a lot of people did take issue with this. Here's one example. My issue is the vitriol and now proven hypocrisy directed at my personal expense, which occurred in single stake pool operator back channels where I have solid visibility. It's a two-faced, disingenuous marketing approach used in the name of championing a false narrative of decentralization. And it is kind of hard to blame the multi-pool operators who are mad about this. We just had a giant discussion about the decentralization merits of multi-pool operators versus single pool operators. And here we have some parties who everyone assumed, I think most people assumed, were single pool operators, when in fact they were a married couple. This is the reason why the SEC has beneficial ownership rules. You have to disclose if your spouse owns a bunch of stock, because obviously, if you only had to disclose your own ownership of securities or stocks, then everybody would just sort of, transfer over all of their assets to their spouse and be like, I don't own any of it. I don't own a single share. There was no insider trading. I don't even own any. Everybody would do that. And of course, if it was okay to, have family members and spouses, running additional pools and still claiming that you're a single pool operator, of course, every single multi-pool operator would have their spouse own a pool, have their kid own a pool, have their brother, sister, parents own a pools. You could run like 9 pools and all of you can just claim you're single pool operators. So it's hard to fault the multi-pool operators who are mad about this, especially given the following. These pools are actually badged as single pool operators. This is one spouse. Apparently, this is the other spouse, according to all these reports. And, probably there were some people who were looking to delegate to a single pool operator and delegated to these pools. Would it have mattered to them if they would have known that, in fact, there were 2 pools being run out of this single household, if you will? Probably. I'm thinking this would probably have been relevant to people, right? It does bring up an interesting hypothetical question. What if 2 single pool operators start dating and get married? Is one of them expected to get rid of their pool? Probably not. That's probably not the case. But I think what you could reasonably expect is that they would say, hey, we're still single pool operators. We really are each individually running our pool, but just so you know, we're married. So, or they don't even have to say who they're married to. I think they could have preserved the privacy of who they're married to, even if in this hypothetical case, if the 2 spouses had said, hey, just so you know, I've married another single pool operator. So I'm still a single pool operator by my own definition. Some people would disagree with that and say if there's 2 pools in one household, that's really one marital party controlling 2 pools. But even if they disagreed with that, they could have said, hey, I still consider myself to be a single pool operator, but just so you know, I married somebody else who's a single pool operator. That's not what happened here. Today there was a response from one of the 2 spouses, and as you'd expect, it's all pretty reasonable. He says, I'm blessed with being married to the spouse. Don't ask me how on earth I managed to achieve that. This is widely known amongst the people in the community we consider ourselves to be close to, but it is not something we have ever wished to broadcast, and we're both very privately inclined. It sounds like the public impression is that because we are married, our pools must be a secretly veiled MPO, with who knows how many more pools being in our control. He says the 2 pools have always been each of our own. No private keys have ever changed hands, which is that's kind of natural. I mean, I think wouldn't really be a reason to give your private keys to your spouse. He explains that one of the pools, I believe his pool, was in fact bought and paid for by his spouse. He says it breaks his heart to see the shade thrown at his spouse. To the people who feel deceived, I am sorry. Our intention from day one has been to keep our private life private. But with my wife's success, neither of us expected the sense of ownership that an audience and community may grow to feel. To all the people who have reserved judgment, remain calm, collected, and waiting for the full picture, thank you. I hope our community will be influenced by your behavior and we will see this demeanor spread. So all very reasonable. I think in this position, always the best call to make a very reasonable response. And this is certainly reasonable. Here's the deal. If you're running a stake pool and you're wearing these badges, single pool operator and Cardano single pool alliance, if you're wearing those badges and there's another pool being run out of your household, transparency and intellectual honesty probably require that you disclose that. If it's not a big deal, then all you have to do is tell people, hey, I have a spouse who also owns a pool. You don't even have to say who it is. I think people would be content if you just said, hey, I have a spouse who also owns a pool. I think that's pretty much required if you're going to wear these badges. If you're not wearing these badges and you and your spouse both own pools, probably not a big deal, right? But if you're holding yourself out to the world and saying, hey, I'm a single pool operator, even joining the Cardano single pool alliance, and there's another pool in your household, you probably need to disclose that. The reason is, it's really the fairness thing, but there are a lot of multi-pool operators who have very honestly told us, hey, I'm a multi-pool operator. They could have easily, if this loophole were accepted, those multi-pool operators could have easily done the same thing. Any one of those multi-pool operators could have said, hey, this one is my pool, but that one's my wife's, and that one's my son's, and that one is my dad's, that one's my mom. You know what I mean? They could have all basically lied about being multi-pool operators if this were an acceptable loophole. That's why this loophole cannot be accepted, right? It's fine if a husband and wife each own pools, but you either probably shouldn't hold yourself out as a single pool operator, or you should say, hey, by my definition, I am a single pool operator, but slight proviso here, little asterisk, my spouse also owns a pool. So there are two pools being run out of my household. Like I said, SEC beneficial ownership rules would require this. Congressional equity ownership disclosure rules would require this. This is why we know about so many of these senators, spouses and their crazy successful stock trading careers. Like I said, this is the kind of news item I would rather not discuss, but I think it's important we do, because if we're going to say that multi-pool operations are bad for decentralization, and they are, then we have to be intellectually consistent. We can't accept this loophole that would allow anyone to hide their multi-pool operation when a lot of MPOs have been very honest about what they're doing. Here you can see that the public perception of all this is actually pretty split. Here's an announcement from the Hosky token community. This announcement says the community sentiment has shown a strong divide in whether or not spousal operators should be considered to be SPOs or MPOs. In light of recent developments, the operators of these two pools have voluntarily decided to step down as Hosky rug pools. There's an interesting additional note here. It says, note, would like to clarify that while I was aware of the marital relationship between the operators of Fika and Nani stake pools, it didn't occur to me initially that it could be perceived as a multiple stake pool operation, despite being separate setups. It was only when a community member brought this possibility to my attention that a code of conduct began being created to draw clear lines. So it looks like even this particular token community is pretty split on whether or not these spouses should be considered SPOs or MPOs. And I don't even think this particular case with these particular spouses is really the important part here. Like what they actually intended or not, I don't think even that matters. I think what actually matters is that we can't allow this little loophole to be accepted, because if we do, that would allow any MPO in the future to hide the fact that they're a multi-pool operator, when so many multi-pool operators have been completely honest about it from the beginning. Pavia dropped their June dev update. And what was really interesting here is the progress on their builder tool. So we heard in the past that they were going to have these kind of dynamic objects inside the builder tool. And here you can see like this window. You can move the window around. You can change the size of the window. And it sort of maintains its most important quality. That's the transparency. Like no matter what size you make the window, you can see through the window, things like that. You can just sort of dynamically change all the different attributes of this object. I'm really excited about a Cardano virtual world where most of the space in the world is actually built by us, the Cardano community, because I think whenever you crowdsource something like that, you get a much better product than if the building of those things is centralized. And the Cardano community is so creative. I can't wait to see what we build inside Pavia. It looks like the Clay Nation ledgers are out. And regardless of what you think of Ledger these days, a Cardano project having a hardware partnership that's this high profile is really good exposure for Cardano. Things are not looking good in the land of Binance when it comes to this DOJ case. Fortune just ran an article indicating that Binance senior executives are quitting over CZ's response to the DOJ investigation. This includes the general counsel, the chief strategy officer, the senior vice president for compliance. Sounds like they all left this week. So I don't know what's going on in the DOJ case. Again, the SEC charges would be civil. The DOJ charges would be criminal. So things not looking good. Finally, here's a weird headline about a familiar name. The New York Times ran an article called FBI Searched the Home of Crypto Exchange Founder, and it's about Jesse Powell, founder of Kraken. This poster says the FBI searched the home of the cryptocurrency executive Jesse Powell in March as part of a criminal investigation into claims that he hacked and cyberstalked a nonprofit that he founded. 3 people with knowledge of the matter said. My question is, how do you cyberstalk an organization? Is that just like going to their website? Am I like cyber stalking, the companies whose websites I go to? Have I been a cyber stalker all this time just by visiting websites? Is that what's going on here? Is this something more legitimate? Is he actually doing some kind of stalking of the humans at this nonprofit? That would be a different thing. Or is this just the Matrix coming to attack our boy? Because I got to admit, Kraken seemed to get off kind of light. The 3 big exchanges in the US, Kraken, Coinbase, and Binance, they all sort of got attacked. But Kraken got off super light. Kraken was able to just settle those charges against it pretty quickly. It seemed like it was a headline one day, but they'd already settled it and they were scot-free after that. Of course, they had to pay the fine, pay the settlement, but they seemed to get off pretty light. Maybe this is why. Maybe because back in March, they already thought the Matrix already thought they were going to be able to get our boy here on these on some kind of maybe some charges related to a criminal investigation for cyber stalking, whatever that means in the context of an organization. I hope you had a great week. I hope you're getting ready for a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.